Hello, and welcome to the short interactive workshop on peer review and revision. I'm Eric Eccles, the Assistant Director of the Writing and Communication Center, affiliate faculty in the School of Interdisciplinary Arts and Sciences, and I teach in the FIP Writing Program. I'll be helping navigate you through this process today. One first thing, I'm trying to do this in one take, so please don't judge if I make a mistake or two. Over the next 20 to 30 minutes, we will engage in the headspace of writing. You will reflect on your own writing process, how you start pre-writing, how you compose, revise, review, edit, review, revise, and what's working for you and what isn't. You'll review some vocabulary and general strategies how to provide relevant and helpful feedback. We'll gain confidence in asking questions about others' writing and discussing writing in general. And lastly, we'll discuss suggestions for the next steps on your paper and your colleagues' papers as well. So before we begin with the work of today's workshop, I'd like to ask, have you ever done a peer review in an academic setting such as this before? Perhaps you've given and received feedback less formally from colleagues, family, or friends. If so, think back to that experience. What worked for it? What did you appreciate? What kind of feedback did you get that was helpful and that you later incorporated into your revisions? Go ahead and pause the video and think about that. Next, in this scenario, what didn't work? What left you wanting more? What was frustrating? What type of feedback did you get that you weren't appreciative of? Go ahead, stop the video, and think about it. And lastly, what feedback are you specifically looking for today in the draft that you brought? What areas are you confident in? What areas are you less confident in? What questions do you have? And how can someone with another perspective help you in your revision process? Along with providing helpful feedback and ideas for revision, we also want to promote confidence in our peers. We do this by pointing out the things that they are doing well in their paper and the points we like. Simply seeking out error or focusing on where they can improve isn't very encouraging or helpful. If you haven't, pause the video and take a moment to read this cartoon. Writing is hard. Even folks who are well paid to do it don't just sit down, crack their knuckles, and start typing to produce a work ready to turn in or send off to the publisher. It takes concentration, tenacity, and a lot of revision. Pause the video for a moment and read this quote by Anne Lamott in her 1994 book, Bird by Bird. Now, take a moment to pause the video and read this excerpt from her chapter, Shitty First Drafts, in the same book. I'm not asking you to read this because I think you've brought a shitty first draft to this peer review session. I'm asking you to read this because if you think you did bring a shitty first draft to this peer review session, then you're in the right place. We're about to look at each of the pieces of this draft, see how healthy it is, and then provide feedback to make it better. So why do we do this, and how does this help you? I believe that writing is a social act, and those who do it effectively and well involve others in their process. I realize that undergraduate academic writing takes place mostly at 2 a.m. in the morning before it's due. If this works for you, keep doing it. If you'd like to improve your writing, then start talking and listening to others about your writing. Having someone provide their perspective on your writing is important because then you can understand how others see your work. And more importantly, this other perspective can inform us if our work is doing what we want it to do or not. As we work with other writers, we can learn from them. We can get fresh ideas on how to word things or different rhetorical strategies. And lastly, we can incorporate others' strengths and even their growth areas to our own writing process. Another perspective often takes someone from the outside looking in. Athletes have coaches and trainers, other folks to tell them to pull their shoulder or align their hips. We might think we have a ninja golf swing, like this example. But in reality, another perspective from the outside might reveal all sorts of things. If you were this golfer, this swing might feel totally natural to you. Or on the other hand, you may think you have this swing, but from the outside looking in, you look like a ninja. This is why another perspective is so important. You might say, I'm not a coach or a trainer, or even a skilled writer. I can barely get through my own assignments. How can I help? Well, the first and most important part is that you want to help. You are likely writing a paper following the same guidelines, so you understand them. Also, you're a part of the class. You've read the material, you've taken lecture notes, and participated in the discussions. You are simply different than the author. You see things differently through the filters of your worldview. You simply have to respond. Your lived experience is the key to giving meaningful feedback. This type of feedback is called reader response, and it is just as it sounds. You respond as a reader of the work. Consider the work that you're working on and what type of feedback would be most appropriate. Grammar feedback isn't that helpful in first drafts because you'll likely have to rewrite a lot anyway. Give detailed feedback with examples. And try not to tell the author what to do. Rather, if you have questions, ask them. If something gives you the feels, good or bad, let the author know. If something doesn't make sense, ask them to clarify, expand, or develop. One of my favorite tools is using I notice, I wonder. I notice that you're doing this, but I wonder what would happen or what your paper might look like if you did that. Let's talk about what to focus on in your peer review today on your colleague's paper. One of the most important, if not the most important pieces of writing for an academic assignment are the guidelines. You can have a mechanically perfect paper that is a strong thesis or research question, organization, evidence and support, and impeccable grammar. But if you don't do what the professor asks, you simply won't do well. You're probably writing the same assignment as your colleagues, but don't rely on your memory. Take a moment to scan through the guidelines and make a short list of what is the instructor asking? What type of writing are they requiring? Is anything unwritten? Has the professor said anything about other students struggling in a specific spot? Where are you struggling on the assignment or doing well? What questions or areas of focus does the author have that they'd like you to take a look at? So we've talked about assignment guidelines. Now we'll talk about what the point of the piece is. For the most part, authors write to communicate a point or something that they want you to know. This is generally a thesis, research question, or some sort of guiding idea to lead you through the paper. In Western academic writing, this is found in the beginning of the work, but be careful, your professor's guidelines may instruct differently. Locate the author's focus and mark it somehow, perhaps underline it. There could be more than one. You might not be sure. If so, Ask the author. And lastly, you might not be able to find it. Also, if this is true, ask the author what their thesis or research question is. We've talked about your professor's requirements and the main idea of the paper. So once you have that focus to the paper and the destination, and you've started reading, try to keep track of the path you're on to get to that destination. Look for road signs along the way. These may take the form of section headings, topic sentences, or event chronology. Consider making notes in the margin or leaving a trail of breadcrumbs to map out this journey. Note the topics or focal points in each paragraph in the margin. This is called a reverse outline. When you finish, you can retrace your steps and the topics discussed in the work. When you do, ask yourself, does this progression make logical sense? Are the topics split up? Do they need to be combined? Are there redundancies? Is there anything left out? Is the author on topic or off topic? This is where being familiar with the prompt is a big help. It's my guess that many of you aren't comfortable with sharing your work. It's personal, and we all have varying levels of confidence. We're doing our best to make this a safe place for you and your work, no matter where you're at. That said, I'd like to establish some norms about what you could expect from each other. We will be engaged. We're not going to fiddle with phones or page through websites on your computer. We will be kind and supportive. We will be specific and detailed. And if we have questions, we will ask them. Is this something that you can commit to for this time today? On campus and in our classrooms at UWB, we hear English and some of us speak English most of the day, so our ears are tuned to its cadence and nuance. Our eyes don't have this connection to language centers in our brain. So when we hear passages that are awkward or slightly off, our eyes won't catch it as we're reading. This makes listening to your work a powerful revision strategy. I'm asking you to try it just for the first couple of paragraphs or the first page. Now, growing up, I was terrified of reading aloud to the class. I understand. I'm not saying you have to read. You can ask someone else in your group to read out loud. Before we start, take a minute, pause this video, and look through your draft to identify specific concerns or questions you have that those reviewing your paper can help you answer. Also, scan through the assignment guidelines to make sure that you have them in your mind. As you're reading through your colleagues' drafts, remember that we like to keep focused on this idea development. Do the ideas make sense? Are they in a logical order? Also, we might consider revising some of the words, some drafting and content revision. What we don't want to do is focus on the grammar or the really surface area pieces of the paper. At this point, you should be sitting in your review groups and have a printed copy of your draft for each person in your group. You'll begin by selecting a paper to begin with and make sure everyone has a copy to make notes on. The writer will share their progress, questions, concerns, and ask someone to read it aloud if they're not comfortable. Read the first 2 or so paragraphs while reviewers take notes on their copy. Remember, these notes are to be detailed and specific questions and comments. And don't forget to add places that you like. When everyone else is done, discuss the work and respond to the author's areas of concern. Lastly, help the author create a list of next steps, what they'll do when they go home and begin incorporating your feedback. Here's a quick slide on annotation guidelines. As you see the thesis or research question, underline it. If there's something that you like or text that you think is strong, put a check mark by it. If you see patterns in the small things, circle them. Add question marks to areas that you don't understand or have questions. And then always write comments, questions, and kudos in the margins. Before you move on to the next paper, talk about what your next steps will be and what you learned from the author or the paper you just read. Now let's talk a little bit about the Writing and Communication Center and how we can help you. Our goal is to help you become a stronger, more confident writer and communicator. We're located in UW2 124 and virtually online via Zoom. We're open 6 days a week. You can have up to 50 minutes every day that we're open. That means nearly 6 hours a week of one-on-one tutoring to help you become a stronger, more confident writer. Here's our contact information. And please remember that we're students, not experts. We have access to lots of resources, tips, and tricks to help you become a better writer. And we have training on how to communicate with you about writing. But we are students. Let's take a quick look at our website so you can learn how to access our services. If you're a current student, you can make an appointment by clicking this link right here. This will take you to EAB Navigate, our campus student support application. Here, you can choose the day, the time, and tutor for your appointment. You can even make appointments up to 3 weeks in advance. If you're not a current student, click on this short hyperlink right here. You'll give us your availability, and then we'll make the appointment for you in EAB Navigate, and then email you the details. This link here will take you to our online submission system where you can submit your paper online via email. You'll fill out a short form about you, the assignment, and the type of help you're looking for. Then you'll send us your paper as a Word document attached to an email. We'll read the work, make comments in the margins, and then get it back to you, hopefully within 48 hours. It may take longer because we might be busy. Midterms and finals are typically very busy times for us. It may take up to 72 hours to get back to you. Lastly, this link here will take you to our virtual Zoom room. You can drop in for a conference if a tutor is available, make an appointment, or ask a quick question. Here, we have handy resources such as style guides, handouts, and advice on a variety of writing topics. As you scroll down the page, here is a short video about what we do and how we do it. Here is a quick video tutorial on how to make an appointment through EAB Navigate. Lastly, you can find our hours down here towards the bottom of our website. We have in-person hours and online hours. Finally, thank you for your time and attention today. Do you have questions, comments, concerns, or compliments? Email us at uwbwacc@uw.edu. Happy writing!